Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing what we're doing in the garden in October. We're going to start with some of our plants. Now, October is a great time to start getting those bulbs in if you haven't already. Something I like to do with bulbs, especially daffodils, crocuses and tulips, and maybe some alliums as well, is to do what's called lasagna planting in pots. So I take a fairly large pot or container, I put compost in the bottom of it and then put my largest bulbs at the very bottom. Usually the tulips are quite large. Then put a layer of compost and then the next size bulbs and then another layer of compost and the next size bulbs, building up those layers until you get to the final layer of compost at the top of the pot. Now what this will do is prolong the flowering time of that particular pot, especially if you start with early things like crocuses and snowdrops and then move through the months into what will come along shortly after one another. So if you start with crocuses, they will be around January. As we get into the February, we'll be seeing the daffodils and the narcissus coming up. And then as you get into March, the tulips will start coming up. They'll also have a bit of a overlap. So the pot will look particularly attractive having things at different heights and flowering at different times and overlapping. So it just adds that little bit of interest and continued flowering through the start of the year. We can cut back and split our perennials, such as echinaceas, rudbeckia, and verbenas, and hostas as well. I've done that this year, is cut back a lot of the hostas and split those. You want to do this in October before they go into their dormant period throughout the winter. You can pot up some winter pots and hanging baskets. I've done mine this year with actually what was from last year, which is a skimmia, some ivies. I think there are some strawberries in there as well. And at the minute, because it's still warm enough, there is still some creeping jenny, although that will probably die back as the cold weather settles in. But getting your winter hanging baskets and winter pots ready so that you have continued interest and things growing throughout the winter season. Throughout October, you can take hardwood cuttings. You can take hardwood cuttings from things like rosemary and thyme, as well as numerous trees. If you're taking multiple hardwood cuttings, I usually keep one end flat and cut one end at an angle. Usually the top would be at the angle, as if there is rain getting on it, the rain will slide off that angle and not make that end rot. Keep the other end flat so you know which way round you want your cuttings to go into your pots. And then put rooting powder on the flat end of the cutting when you're potting it. I usually use a pen or a chopstick to create the hole in the soil to put your cutting in. That means that the rooting powder doesn't kind of come off as you're putting it into the compost or the soil in the pot that you're putting your cuttings in. Give it a thorough water and put them in an area where they are not going to be bothered, and you should have fresh plants from those cuttings by the spring. Things you can be sowing in October include peas, broad beans. You can also plant out spring cabbages, carrots and spinach, as well as spring onions. You can also sow sweet peas now for early summer flowering, but do make sure when you plant them to use deep pots, as they don't particularly like their roots to be disturbed once they start growing. October is the month you want to start planting out your garlic cloves as well. Now this is a very simple process. You just need to take a bulb of garlic, separate the cloves and plant them out. Usually I give about 6 inches between each clove. Now that's probably a little more than you need, but it just ensures that you give each clove enough space to grow into a good sized bulb. So you can go and just buy some organic garlic from your local supermarket, or if you have a friend who grows their own garlic, ask them for some and get them in the ground in October. You can also divide some herbs like chives, lemon balm and some mints. Marjoram as well can also be divided at this time of year, as well as sedum and geraniums as well if you're wanting more of those plants. You want to clear away any old crops that are finished now and clear areas and empty pots and other things that are kind of spent now. You don't want them hanging around in your garden as they can harbour pests and diseases. So empty those out into your compost, give the pots a clean and make sure they're prepared for the next use, and clear the beds, get them prepped for the winter. I usually try and pull out a lot of the annuals once they are spent, rake the ground, try and pull up any weeds or anything that might have started growing there that I don't want growing there, and then put a layer of cardboard over it over the winter, secured usually with a few rocks or branches or things to help suppress the weeds over the winter. You can also use big tarps or covers. This will just help to retain the moisture in that soil, but also to prevent the weeds coming up so that it can be used for the next season. You can also put well-rotted manure or compost on there as well, just again to help feed the soil and to keep those weeds down and prepare those beds for the use in the spring. If you're growing pumpkins and squash, you will start to notice the fruit coming onto those now. You would probably benefit from lifting them off the ground, particularly if it is going to start getting very damp, as they will start to rot if they're sat on the ground. And it also means that things like slugs and snails will be attracted to that and they will eat your fruit. So I just use a little pot or a stone or something that you can lift it off the ground, clear away the leaves that are around it, so that will help the sun, when the sun does come out, to ripen the fruit for you and to get those wonderful colours on the pumpkins and the squash until they're fully ready to be harvested. October is a good month to be washing your polytunnels and greenhouses. There may be a bit of dirt and debris build up on the outside layers of those, and sometimes the inside layers, depending on what you have been growing. So October is a good month to get that cleaning done and out of the way before the winter settles in. Also, you want to continue to clear any falling leaves that may be being caught in your guttering into your water catchment systems, or just generally on the ground. Again, add those to your compost. They will create a wonderful mulch for some of your plants as well. So just use those falling leaves that will be very abundant at this time of year to your benefit. You can start putting out bird feeders a bit more often now. The food sources for the birds will start to dwindle around now, as the bugs and the bees and things will start to dwindle in number. So you can put out bird feed, and you can also start creating some wildlife habitats using piles of wood or sticks that you can pile up to create those little homes for creatures over the winter. Cover or store any outdoor furniture that you may have out. You can either store these in a dry area such as a shed or a garage, or there are covers that you can get for them. This will just protect them over the winter and as the weather gets wet and more cold. And also, if you have hoses that are out in the garden, usually throughout the summer, I have one that's particularly long as my garden is very long. I do bring that in over the winter, as I won't be watering quite as much, certainly not outside as it waters plenty with the rain. But the hose pipes you are going to want to bring in and store in an area where they are not going to get frosty and potentially split with the cold weather. October is a great time to aerate your lawns if you do get a dry spell, to get out there and do that. You can use something as simple as a garden fork. That is what I tend to use, as that's the piece of equipment I have accessible to me. There are other pieces of equipment that you can use, or particular machines that you can get to help aerate your lawns. This will just create those spaces in the soil under your lawns to help take air and water into them so that it can be absorbed more easily into those areas and doesn't create compaction throughout your lawns, which can then deteriorate the quality of your grass as well. You can start to bring in equipment that you're no longer using in the garden, such as canes and netting, or anything that you've used to cover your beds that no longer need that protection. Just bring these in, clean them if you need to, certainly with used pots and that sort of thing, and just get them prepared for the next use. Most of your vegetables should be harvested by now in October, but you can leave kale and Brussels sprouts out, as they actually ripen after a little bit of a frost. So they can be left out, but other things will probably die back if you don't harvest them before that. So do make sure that you bring in all your crops before the first frost. Something else to do before the first frost will be to insulate some of your plants or protect them using cloches or covers. You can also use horticultural fleece. Sometimes I put straw around the bases of some of my plants to protect the roots. This also helps to retain moisture in the soil as well. As the temperatures start to drop more rapidly throughout the month of October, you are definitely going to want to close up those polytunnels and greenhouses to protect anything that is growing in there. You may even want to keep them closed throughout the day if it is particularly cold, but certainly in the evenings the doors will need to be closed more regularly until the mornings. As the weather becomes a bit more unpredictable throughout this time of year, you may want to also secure some things in your gardens, such as the lighter greenhouses that you can get in sort of supermarkets and things. They will probably need securing down as the winds and storms become more frequent throughout the month. Moving on to the beekeeping now. As we're coming through the month of October, the bees will need probably less checks as they are going to be getting into their sort of dormant time of the year when they don't really come out of the hive. What we can do as beekeepers to assist them is to remove any varroa treatments that you may have put in earlier this season. Do note down the batch numbers of those treatments and the start dates and the removal dates that you had them in the hive. You also will want to reduce the entrances of your hives to maybe just 1 or 2 bee widths, as you will still probably get wasps and robber bees trying to get the last of the stores that they can before the winter really settles in. You can also put mouse guards, if you haven't already, on the front of your hives to prevent any rodents from getting into your hives. And one more thing you should definitely do is to secure your hives. Now mine are on hive stands and I usually use ratchet straps to secure them in place on those stands. This is just to prevent them getting blown over or knocked or anything happening to them during stormy weather or particularly windy weather. We've had some quite harsh storms last year, so ratchet straps just secure the lids and secure the hives onto those stands, making them a bit more secure in case of those weather conditions changing. Okay, that is everything for this month. If you have any questions, please note it down in the comments below and I will get back to you. And I hope you're enjoying the end of the season, getting those autumnal feelings coming through, and we will see you again next month. Thanks so much.